In this video, I'll show you the barn, outline some of its needs. As we look at this side, you can see there are holes where the siding is just so weathered through to the point where there's just openings and gaps in there. As we get down to this end here on this side, a lot of water comes down and splashes back off of this stone step. And as we look here, you can see some of the rot up under there into the corner, which is impacting the sill and up into that floor. On this side though, the foundation's not too bad because 40 years ago or so, the stone essentially at each of the post locations has been taken out, and there are concrete sonotubes in there under each post. Looking at the front of the barn, that top upper window there is all broken out. That's just polyethylene covering that. The transom window over the sliding door you can see is largely broken out. And then as we look down here, same issues with deteriorating siding. In fact, we even have a split in the siding here for whatever reason. And then we've got the entry, which is still in okay shape, but that end plank is floating. And every time you drive over it with the lawn tractor or the tractor, it's quite a bump there. As we look at this other eaves side here, this corner and really this whole side is in pretty good trouble. So the sill here is pretty much down in the dirt in the corner, so this needs to be addressed. And as we move down this side, you can see the siding is really deteriorated coming off of the building. And as I continue on down here, take a look at the sill here. You can see plenty of deterioration. It's not so bad on the inside of that member. Unfortunately, that member is not carrying the floor joists, but nonetheless, this needs attention. No foundation work was ever done out on this side of the barn. So this is still sitting on the stone, but you can see how that has settled down kind of away from the sill, and it's not supporting it fully. So there's actually some sag in this side, which when we go inside, you'll be able to see. So here's the back gable of the barn, kind of like the front. That upper window is all broken out, covered with polyethylene. The transom is closed in all glass, but it's not in great shape. Sliding door is not in great shape. And then this end, the siding is a mishmash. Instead of being vertical boards like the entire rest of the barn, these boards are run horizontally, and then in this case there's asphalt shingle over it, and then over the rest of it it's wood shingle. And so this should really just be redone and brought into conformity and all be vertical boards. We can see the foundation stones are kind of collapsed in there, and you can't really see it very well in the video, but there's a little bit of a sag there in the middle. I think that sill member is probably deteriorated as well. Whereas if you go to the other side where the corner is on the concrete sonotube there, seems to be in better condition. But we'll take a look inside and I'll show you some of the issues in there as well. So as we walk in the front door, this section of floor right in front of me was redone probably 40-ish years ago up to about right there, and then beyond that hasn't been touched. So as we look around in here, the floor off to my left in this particular bay is very uneven. I think the joisting is not running as it was originally configured to do. But as we come in here, for the most part, things are in pretty good shape as we look up. So all the framing members are there. They're in pretty decent shape. You can see all the spots where we see daylight right through the siding in here. So obviously this building is not airtight at all. You see all the gaps between the siding boards. The roof is good. So the roof is solid and doesn't leak. But the bigger issue is there was a period in time a couple years ago where it was leaking, and the floor over here is in really, really tough shape. In fact, underneath that plywood and this plank here, the floor is actually punched through. There's another spot over here where there's such rot that it's punching through. If you stepped on that, you would go through. And you can kind of see, I'm actually gonna spin around here. You can kind of see that basically everything is sloping down. So this sidewall is lower than the center aisle over here. So this right side over here has settled, where that foundation is still sitting on the stone. So as we've seen, there's a lot of work to do here in this barn. And the nice thing about that is we're going to be able to do it with lumber that comes right off of this property. So there's a couple up the road with a sawmill who also have the equipment to move the logs to their property to mill them up, and they just recently got the capability to make shiplap as well as tongue and groove. So we're actually going to be getting tongue and groove flooring from them and shiplap siding boards from them to work on this barn. So what I thought I would do now is kind of take you out in the field, show you some of the trees that we're going to use that are going to get milled up. And that's all supposed to start beginning in October with harvesting some of those trees. I'm now standing down in the back corner of one of the fields here on the property, and off into the woods behind me you can see there's a pine tree leaning over. There's actually more than that. We'll take a walk over there and get a little closer and I'll show you what's going on. But all of the siding we're going to have milled from white pine, and most of that is down here in the back of the property. So let's take a look. So we're in near the base of the trees now, and you can see that basically the whole entire root system lifted up out of the ground. These came over in storms. So there's that pine there, and then this one is two together, this large clump here. So let's kind of get around so that you can see that. These are not for the faint of heart in terms of clearing out of here. So they're going to actually bring an excavator with a grapple down here to work with these and cut these up. These are pretty good sized pine trees, and so we should get some nice boards out of that. And then down underneath is a maple, and I'll use that for firewood. So as I stand in the middle of the lower field here, that is one of the big pine trees that we're going to take. And then as we look along the stone wall, there are a few more, but we'll head over here just so you can see. This one here at the field edge is at least 3 feet in diameter here at the base. And so this is a substantial tree. We'll get a lot of siding boards out of that. And then as we move up the line here, we've got another one right there, and then a third one just off to the other side of that. All of those are good sized trees. So we'll take all this white pine, that'll get milled up into shiplap. What's nice about having this done is that instead of being locked into forced to buying either 1x8s or 1x10s, basically they can mill me whatever they can get. So a combination of 8s, 10s, and even 12s or more, given the size of these. The other thing is I can get whatever length I need. So we're going to get 15-foot logs because the eaves walls on the barn are just over 14 feet tall. So that way we can do a single piece. The other tree we might take is that double right there. One of those will probably fall anyway. So we may just take those and get those into siding as well. So that's the white pine inventory. In terms of the flooring and any joist or sill replacement we need to do, we're actually going to use red pine. And the red pine is across the street. So I'll walk over there and show you what we have over there. As we walk on down here toward this red pine stand so I can show you what we got going on, I figure I'll just explain a little bit about red pine. So red pine, unlike white pine, is not native to New Hampshire. So these trees were all planted sometime probably in the mid-20th century And unfortunately, they're not healthy. They're not doing very well down here. And so they really kind of need to go. The other issue is we don't have a lot of understory or undergrowth coming up underneath them. And so really this is going to take, on this piece of land that I'm walking on now, a little bit of work to kind of bring it back. But on my way back out, I'll show you some of what is starting to happen up closer to the road, and how essentially I'm going to work to enhance that or promote that continued development. So we'll look at the red pine, and then we'll walk out and I'll show you what's going to be taking its place. So this is a good point to stop and just show you what's going on. So these are all red pine trees here. And as I look up, you can see there is just not a lot of life there, not a lot of green needles up top. And so all these trunks are red pine. They're beautifully straight, having grown here on this hillside, planted in rows close together. And just to describe where I am, you know, you see the foliage up there? Those are actually maple trees, and the road is right up there at the top of the hill. So I'm at the bottom, and right behind me is a large swamp. So all of these pines are anywhere between 8 and 16 inches in diameter for the reds. Here's a good example here right in front of me. And so none of them are healthy, and these are going to get cut down and turned into the flooring material. So red pine as a wood is harder and denser than white pine. So it'll be better and more sturdy as a flooring material in the barn, as well as a joist material. Now, these trees are nowhere near as large as the white pines. And so these are going to get milled into 2x6s and 2x8s and made tongue and groove so they'll lock together as flooring. Now, I was mentioning that there's not a lot of understory here. In other words, as we look at this, there's no sort of new growth really coming up under these trees other than a few scraggly beaches there. And so that's a bit of an issue, and rejuvenating this area is something that I am going to pay attention to. Now, as I swing back around and we look back this way, so going back that way is towards where the house is. Of course, it's on the other side of the road. There is actually quite a bit of maple starting to grow up near the road. And it's actually sugar maple, not red maple. So that's a really good thing. And there's also a black walnut tree up there that's doing really well. So we'll walk up there and see what's going on. But we have the beginnings of a really nice sugar maple stand. So here's kind of the end of the extension of the sugar maple stand. You can see all these saplings here. Those are all sugar maples that are starting in and kind of making their way down. So we do have growth here. Coming down from up toward the house and the garage and the roadway. And so this is what I'm going to focus on in terms of when those red pines are gone, replenishing with sugar maple. And I plan to get some seedlings and get them going, possibly mixed with black walnut in the spring to keep this going, basically, and get a nice sugar maple stand. Sugar maple is a very high value wood for lumber, and of course you can also use the sap for making maple syrup. So to have a good, nice growing sugar maple stand will be a real benefit. The other thing is it's a great firewood as well, and so when it's at the size needing to be thinned, you can get a lot of great firewood from sugar maple. So this will wrap up an introduction to the barn and its needs, some of the timber we have around the property, and how we're going to make use of that to start working on a restoration in this barn. Stay tuned for future updates as the project progresses.